Hi, welcome to Viewpoint. I'm Lily Newman, the host, and along with my co-host Susan Solomon, Executive Director of Drug Crisis in Our Backyard, we'd like to welcome Sean Dunne. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Lily. How are you doing?
Good. Hi, Sean. How are you?
Thank you guys so much for having me. This is awesome.
Sean, you are the director of OXYANA. Am I saying it right?
Yeah, OXYANA.
And that was, you filmed that in 2013.
Yeah, we actually filmed in 2012. The film took place in a little small Appalachian mountain town, an old coal mining town in West Virginia, that we came across on a road trip. I was out driving around with an old friend of mine, a country singer, and he took me through this town, and we got out of the car there, and it just felt very like a dark atmosphere, like something was off.
So you had no idea. You just drove, you just got out, felt something going on in the air, and then how did you go from there?
Well, we actually ran into a few juggalos, and juggalos are fans of this band called Insane Clown Posse, and that's a whole different story.
Okay.
But I had made a film about juggalos, and we ran into a couple juggalos there, and they said, if you really want to know what's going on in this town, which is called Oceana, it's dope, that's it. And he said so much so that they're calling this place OXYANA. And 5 minutes later, he was shooting up right in front of us. And that thrust me into a universe unlike I had really ever been a part of before. I'd been around a lot of hardcore drug abuse in my life, and so I kind of knew what it was like and what it felt like. But to see a whole town in that darkness, in the grips of that, was really disturbing. And I didn't know what else to do other than to go there and make a film and try to give them a platform and tell their stories. So that's what OXYANA was.
Because that was I'm trying to think, wasn't that the first, I think documentary about the opiate epidemic?
Because it was so early on. It was 2013. It was before anyone was really talking about the fact that we were in the early stages of an opiate epidemic.
Yeah. I mean, I think the fact of the matter is a lot of the people in these towns, in towns like Oceana, towns that this country needed to get by, coal mining towns like that are what kept the lights on in this country for so long.
That's right.
Steel towns, those places, we turned our backs on those places, and we left their populations injured and suffering, and this stuff moved in very quickly, and it happened a long time ago. I think that especially in parts of West Virginia and Ohio and Kentucky, this problem started in the late 90s. And it was kind of just going, a black market starting to build really strong, kind of in the underbelly of the suffering left by, the economic vacuum when you just pull out and there's nothing else there for these people. So they turned to drugs, and we just happened to get there where it was really, we thought, reaching some sort of peak. And I remember saying that this town seems to be going through what seems like a nationwide, a microcosm for a nationwide epidemic.
Right.
And at the time, that was a hugely controversial thing to say, that we were going through an epidemic.
Right.
So I remember, it's funny that you said that. You thought that it was hitting a peak. And because I started my organization in 2012, Drug Crisis in Our Backyard, after I lost my son to a heroin overdose.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. And I also thought at that time it was reaching a peak. Little did I know that 5 years later, close to 6 years later, it would be so much worse than it was back then.
Yeah, and sadly, we were predicting that at the time because no one was looking at really what the issues were. Instead, we shift the blame, and we look at each other and we try to blame the addict, and we get into these really vicious cycles of criminalizing suffering. And these people have nowhere to go. They have nowhere to turn. They have no education on this stuff other than abstinence education. Don't do it. Don't do it. So, they're victims. We've let them down, and 64,000 Americans died in 2016.
Yep.
That number's going up.
I know.
That's more than died in the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
So this is what really is the question to my generation: is what are we going to do?
Right.
How many of our brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers are we going to let pass away?
Right.
How many people are we going to let get ripped away from us? I mean, and to me, it has to start in looking at each other differently, having a shift of consciousness. starting to destigmatize the user, starting to look at people, look at the system we're in, the systems we've created, really go deep, really go deep. It's so much easier to be angry and upset and want to blame the drug user or the drug dealer. I know our current administration now is talking about death penalty as a punishment for drug dealers. And you know, there might have been a time in your journey of grief that might have seemed like something that made you feel better, you know, an approach like that. And I mean, I can't speak for you personally, but I know there's a lot of people that have faced that loss that do want to just shift the blame right there. It was the dealer, they gave my son or daughter bad stuff and now they're not with me anymore. And yeah, they should pay that same price. But that anger is really indicative of more of the disconnection that we're going through that led to this problem. We need to look at each other as one again and start to and start to love each other.
How about the pharmaceutical companies?
I think that we've let them run away with greed. We've,
Yeah.
you know, it's fueled on greed. I think I don't mind speaking the name of the Sackler family. It's something that people should definitely look into. If you've never heard that name before, Google them. Google the Sacklers, Google the New Yorker article about them. It goes into great depth.
That's right, it does.
About how this family's put out misinformation about what this stuff does to people and incentivized through our effed up health system, incentivized prescribing these things to people and saying, oh no, they're not addictive. They're the best thing for pain. No, they're not. Now they're finding in studies Tylenol is just as effective.
So that was 1996 that
Yes.
drug was patented.
Yeah.
And so you said that this started in the 90s, the late 90s.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw the 60-minute presentation not too long ago, maybe 2 months ago, with the McKesson and the drug distributors. Did you see that?
No, no.
Okay, so
I'll check that out.
it was calling those drug distributors that were sending all these pills down to OXYANA and other small cities, towns.
Yeah.
Like that.
Huge numbers.
Millions of pills
That's
to
right.
them.
Yeah.
Dude, what do you think they were doing with those pills?
right.
They were putting them on the black market and selling
Yeah,
them.
I mean the town over from Oxyana had something like 9 million pills coming
Right.
to it in
That's
half
right.
a year. Or
That's
something
right.
like
For,
that.
for a town that has maybe 20, not even 20,000, like
Not even 2,000.
I know.
Yeah.
Oceana
Small
had
town.
1,500 people there, and the amount. Here's the thing: the amount of pills flowing through there. People haven't seen that. All of a sudden, someone was prescribed something by the doctor that they trust,
Right.
and they're in a situation now where they have a bottle of pills that's worth more money than they've ever seen in their whole
That's
life.
right. That's right.
Tell me what you're going to do.
If you don't have food, you don't have any money coming in, you're going to sell them.
So they become a drug dealer.
That's right.
That's the people Donald Trump wants
That's
dead,
right.
Jeff Sessions wants dead.
That's right.
No, those people, they deserve our compassion. They deserve us trying to build a better system for everyone.
Right. Right.
So, you know.
Yeah, it's the anger is towards the drug companies.
Absolutely.
And the distributors that allowed this to happen.
Absolutely.
And also the DEA was trying to bring these people to justice, and they were told to stop
That's right.
investigating. This
Oh,
is all in 60 Minutes.
Yeah.
If you'd really enjoy it if you watch it, because it's quite the controversy when you start to think about how embedded all this whole problem is in our country, in our government.
Yeah, oh,
It
absolutely.
really makes you really wonder.
Oh, well, I mean, for me, it's filming the film Oxyana and really getting into this started me on a journey of completely losing faith in America. In America, because we're letting this happen. And it's not some accident.
Right.
It's
That's
actually
right.
by design.
Yes.
That's right. That's
And
exactly.
the reason that we're seeing now what I call a war on healing with the continued criminalization of cannabis and with they're trying to now make Schedule 1 a drug, a plant like kratom, which helps a lot of people get off opioids. And it's a plant and it's harmless, no one's died from it, and the DEA is going after it. And this is what I call the war on healing, because there's things that people can do. There's much more holistic approaches that we're criminalizing, like cannabis. 2 studies came out today that show in the states that legalized cannabis, opioid use went down. So, you know.
There's a little skepticism about that article per se. And since I read it, but I can't remember it 100%, I'm just going to go, eek, not 100%
Oh,
accurate.
absolutely. But what I'm saying is, in the meantime, we're going to criminalize that behavior, we're going to criminalize people that want to turn to kratom, something you can get in a head shop for
Right.
$30 a week. I'm reading articles with people saying, I was on a $300 a day heroin habit.
Right.
Kratom came into my life.
Right.
I take $30 a week of this little powder from a plant, and it gets rid of those things. Iboga, that's another great way
Right.
to heal and
Right.
to detox and to commune with yourself. Figure out who you are and what you're all about.
And there
do
are a
your
lot of,
healing that
and
way.
you're right, and there are a lot of different ways
Yeah.
to get recovery.
Yeah.
I know. I'm from the
There are-
treatment background. We have a lot of different ways. There's not one door.
But what concerns me
Yes.
now is that the pharmaceuticals, the very people with the greed that got us into this thing,
Right.
are going to try to control
Absolutely.
how we heal from it.
Absolutely.
I don't buy it.
And the
I don't buy
system
the
is screwed
Suboxone
up.
stuff. I don't buy any of it. And I'm not gonna demonize even specific drugs,
Right.
because even OxyContin, they exist for a
That's
reason.
right. Absolutely.
They're overprescribed, they're misprescribed, and we're miseducated about what those things do and what addiction even is.
Right.
And we don't want to have those hard conversations,
Right.
and it leads to this disconnect where the blame's being shifted all over the place.
That's
and
right.
we're not really looking at the crisis that we're really in.
And changing the
really
system.
what we need to do
We have to change
is
the system.
educate the communities.
That's right.
Yes.
So that the communities, they really need to have an understanding of what addiction is. And it's funny
Absolutely.
though, because this is what we do, Lillian and I, we go out, we go to schools, we go to staff development, and we educate people. And it's amazing how many people do not know, and
Right.
when it's a public forum,
That's right.
how many people do not show up.
That's right.
It's just
They don't.
amazing.
They don't.
And when we first started, before people were really talking about it in 2012, we had 200 people
right.
show up to our first event, 300 people show up to our second event in 2013,
That's right.
because people wanted to hear about it because there was nobody talking
That's right.
about it. Now that more people are talking about it,
No one shows
nobody comes out.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Like they've had their saturation point
That's
with
right.
this topic.
That they're full
Yeah.
of it.
We're done, unless it affects them.
That's right.
I know, and it will.
And it will.
Eventually.
It will.
And
And
so many people dying from it.
But how do we get people to move from wait till it affects me to let me do something now? Let me start understanding. Let me look at the system. Let me be part of changing the system.
Well, part
So-
of that is to say it is affecting me now. Even
Right.
if I haven't lost someone,
Right.
my communities are dying.
Right.
The people that are the pillars of my community are withering away. You can feel it. You can feel it when you go to places. When you go to places that have lost their will to survive, really. And it happens to whole communities.
yes.
It happens on the individual level, but it happens to whole communities. And what we need to do is kind of show as a society what our societal immune system can do, that we can rise to the occasion as compassionate people
Right.
and say, the drug abusers, the drug dealers, all of it, they are all us. We all have that inside of us. We all have the capacity to be that. Now let's do something
Right.
about it. It starts by educating each other. Harm reduction,
Absolutely.
huge.
Huge.
No one
It
even
is.
wants to talk about harm reduction or needle exchanges.
I know.
Things that could totally transform and change communities, and we have plenty of evidence to that.
So where do you know about needle exchanges in this country?
Not in this country.
No, not in
Vancouver.
this country, right.
If you have to look a little further, but I mean, I think the solutions to a lot of our drug issues are, they're playing out. They might not be playing out on a national level here, but they're playing out on local levels, maybe in this country, and certainly in other countries, countries like Portugal who have decriminalized
Right.
drugs.
Yes.
Um,
Now,
it's-
is that all drugs? All drugs are
All
decriminalized?
drugs
Right.
are decriminalized, which
Right.
doesn't mean they're legalized, which
Right.
is a whole different thing. It
Right.
doesn't mean
Okay.
that you can walk into CVS and buy LSD.
Right.
It still means that there's a black market. It means that they're treating those people differently.
Okay. Do you think it cuts when you decriminalize the drugs? You think it cuts into the black market at all? I
Yeah.
mean, it does.
Well,
I'll
I
have
mean,
to
in a
look at
way,
that.
if you're just decriminalizing and not talking about full legalization, it almost it enlivens the black markets
Yes.
a little bit.
Yeah. I think if you're talking about, now we know that with legalization there is a competitive situation